Mitchell John D. Murray Charles, World War II, deceased, Medal of Honor recipient. Murray Robert P., deceased. Nelson Eric E., Desert Storm, deceased. Nush Dennis W., Vietnam War. Ono Frank H., World War II, deceased, Medal of Honor recipient. Ojenjuski Joshua, World War II, deceased. Osabin Beverly. Penwell Ben, Korean War. Pilarski Butch, Korean War, deceased. Podorick Andrew, World War II, deceased. Ritchie John, Vietnam War, deceased. Russell Charles, World War II, deceased. Russell James E., World War II, deceased. Russell L.F., World War II, deceased. Schoaf Gerald E., Vietnam. Schoaf Lawrence, World War II, deceased. Siebert Paul Jr., deceased. Setzer John L., World War II, deceased. Schaefer David A., Vietnam War, deceased. Schaefer Richard, Vietnam War, deceased. Shy Harold Ray, World War II. Sipple Richard D., Vietnam War. Slater Kenneth, World War II, deceased. Smith Thomas L., Vietnam War. Spaulding Bob L., Vietnam War. Spear Lewis, Vietnam. Spear Robert, Vietnam. Stroud Orville, World War II, Army Air Corps. Szynski C., World War II, deceased. Szynski Edward, World War II, deceased. Szynski Stan, Korean War. Szynski Ted, World War II, deceased. Tarkane Michael, World War II. Thomas George L. Vales Hugh, deceased. Vales James, Spanish-American War, deceased. Vales James R., World War II, Pacific, deceased. Vaughn Brian, Panama Gulf War. Versace Royce, Vietnam, KIA, Medal of Honor recipient. Walt Mike, World War II, deceased. Roth Frank G., World War II, deceased. Watkins George R. Sr., Vietnam War. Weston Jerome C., World War II, deceased. Weston Mythery, Vietnam War, excuse me. Westpaul Glenn A., Vietnam War, KIA. Whitehead John M., Civil War, deceased, Medal of Honor recipient. Wine Larry, Vietnam War. Wozniak Ronald, Korean War. Wiles George, World War II, Air Corps, deceased. Yagelski Victor A., World War II, KIA. Young Robert, Desert Storm. Young Stacy, Desert Storm. Youngblood Kelly, Iraq War, KIA. United States Marine Corps. Adil George J., World War II, KIA. Birchfield Joshua, Afghanistan, KIA. Bruce Daniel D., Vietnam War, KIA, Medal of Honor recipient. Bruce Stephen J., deceased. Bruce Thomas, Vietnam War. Callahan Shane T, Afghanistan, KIA. Carlton Bob. Carol J T. Chance Ron, Vietnam War. Coleman Ken Doc, Vietnam War. Coulter O.A. Davis Frank, World War II. DePaul Carl Robert. Daughtery Richard, Vietnam. Elk Stephen, Vietnam War. Fletcher Stephen, Vietnam War. Gebelson Bernie, Korean War, deceased. Gross Frankie E, Vietnam War, deceased. Grant Gary W, Vietnam War. Griffith Calvin, Vietnam War. Hammonds Ron, Vietnam War, deceased. Hannon Dave, Vietnam War. Hannon Dick, World War II, deceased. Herr Charles. Hughes James, Vietnam War. Kennedy Kelly, Iraq. Killander David, Vietnam War. Kemmel Ron. Kemmel Ted, Iraq War. Kruger Patrick. Glenn Scott H.D. Lutz Greg L, Vietnam War, deceased. Milton Terrence, Vietnam War. Moulton Seth, Vietnam War. Iraq War. Panel Ron. Pilarski Jeff. Pollock Harold L, World War II, deceased. Pollock John M, Vietnam War. Pollock Thomas. Pollock William, Desert Storm. Rodriguez Joseph, World War II, deceased. Schaefer Francis, World War II, deceased. Solverick Ted, World War II. Speakman Roger, Vietnam War. Strudman William C. Vales Dennis M, deceased. Ward Earl H, World War II, deceased. White Mark. Wobolowski J.R., World War II, deceased. Fuller Christy A. United States Navy. Arnold Clifford, World War II, deceased. Bendix Kenneth, World War II, deceased. Blendu Richard, World War II, deceased. Bruce Dean L, World War II, deceased. Bruce Hubert Jr., World War II, deceased. Bruce Thomas Jr. Butler Miles J, Spanish American War, deceased. Case Lewis, Vietnam War. Krubel Morris, World War II, deceased. Childress William M, World War II. Donnell Richard G. Elliott Christopher. Elston Gerald D, World War II, deceased. Gallagher Danny, Vietnam War. Glassley Mark. Glassley Robert, World War II. Harold Charles, Vietnam. Knight Henry, World War II, deceased. Knight Thomas Jr. Lee William E, Vietnam War, KIA. Michi Jean, deceased. Milner William, Korea. Monroe James. Murray Carl E, deceased. Navy SEAL Team 6. Phillips Noel. Pollock Robert, Vietnam War. Rogers Warren H.